Hey now, welcome to episode 40 of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along, welcome back. But if this is your first time listening to us, welcome. I'm your host, Ruben, and my co-host, Stan, is also on the line. How you doing, man?
Doing great, man.
Yeah, so this episode was with Oliver. I thought, it's pretty good. We started out talking about his job, which I'm just ultimately jealous of. How about you?
Oh, yeah. I'm hoping that someday weed delivery man is a occupation that I could tap into here in Chicago for sure soon.
Yeah, for sure. And I almost think we didn't talk to him enough about the job, but I think it's a good little chat we had about his job as a delivery guy. And then we just we got into some other topics, and as we usually do, and get off in the weeds here and there. But for the most part, I think we had some really good talks about meditation and ego death. I thought his trip reports are really cool too. So.
That psychedelics, anxiety, how to deal with these things, like integration, just everything we talked about. I thought the flow was really good, and I found him incredibly relatable as well.
Yeah. So without any further ado, I hope you guys enjoy Oliver. Yeah, so Oliver, thanks for reaching out and coming on the podcast. I know you said you've been listening for quite a while, right?
Yeah, well, I've sort of been chugging your podcast as I've been doing deliveries. It's been nice.
Yeah, and so that's we've got a lot we could talk about, but one thing that interested me from your email is your occupation as a marijuana delivery driver.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, how you got into it and what it's like?
Well, first I was a pizza delivery driver for like 2 years, and then I really started to hate it. I was lactose. I thought I was lactose intolerant, but I could like tolerate cheese. But then as I ate more and more cheese, it built up a half-life in my body, and like it just felt terrible, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And so this weed delivery company had just been was just like perfect, and I loved it. And one day the owner delivers a couple times, and one day he did it. I just straight up asked him, like, "Do you need anybody to deliver? I'm a delivery driver. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I know all these towns like the back of my hand." And surprisingly, he was like, "Yeah, okay." And that was, I know, that was like all I had to do was ask. And yeah, he's just been like the nicest guy. He pays me well. It's surprising.
Yeah.
Like I'm really blessed to have this job. Though as a result, I started smoking weed like every single day. So that's not good. And I just like to say I don't advise that. It's like once you're in it, it's like it's hard to get out.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly hard to get out. It's just hard to try sometimes. Like I literally just haven't tried that hard.
Yeah. So are you smoking weed every day because you like? Is it customary to like smoke with the people you're delivering, or do a lot of people try that? Or?
No. Surprisingly, like not really. Sometimes people will ask, like a couple people like, "Hey, like if you're free when you're delivering, like you can come over and chill at my place." And I'm like, I appreciate people asking that, but usually like I'm so busy that like it just doesn't work out, and I probably wouldn't do it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, the people are nice, like surprisingly nice. They're just all sorts of people. Like there are no stereotypes for the people I deliver. They're just people.
Yeah. So is it like Stan and I both like the HBO show High Maintenance.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I like the show. It's very artistic and everything too, but it's like, very eccentric people that are his you know, like, do you think that he's exaggerating a lot, or that, maybe being in New York City, that show is drawing from different stuff than where you may be?
Yeah, I've seen that show. I've seen how crazy it can get, and yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Um, I wouldn't I wouldn't say I've dealt with as crazy people as that. Maybe like if you edited down like the entire year I've done it into just like a couple of interactions, definitely like
yeah,
that could like fit in an episode.
you're
But
right.
that would just be cherry picking.
Yeah,
But I do have some stories of some pretty weird customer interactions. But
I mean, any stories you want to tell?
uh God, there's this one girl. I can say for sure she's our worst customer, just for the fact that some customers get in the car, some customers don't, and she always does. And she takes forever to decide. She always just buys like an eighth and just like smells them and just like takes like forever. The first time I met her, uh, well, like the first she actually she ordered one time while I was delivering and then never got back. And then I delivered to her the next time, and she said, "Oh, sorry about that. I got locked up last night." And I thought like, "Oh, you mean like she means like her schedule? Her schedule got locked up." And as she started explaining, she was like, "Oh no, I got like thrown in jail. I was like doing heroin in a bathroom, and I didn't realize I was like there for 45 minutes." I was just like, "Oh my god!" And so I've delivered to her like so many times. It's like it's a bit episodic. One time she came into the car and she was like having like an emotional breakdown, and like it was like I couldn't not acknowledge it, so I just asked her if she needed a hug, and like the hug lasted like 40 seconds or something.
Is it something where people have orders, or like you said, I guess I didn't know that, there's time in the
Yeah, well,
decision phase.
we have like three of each strain basically for like well like
Okay.
three we sell it like pre-packaged in like a 7 grams for like $50, so that way like the customers always buy like a minimum of like $50 sort of each time, so that way we don't have to deliver to people for like $25 worth. It's like it just like saves gas and time.
Yeah, yeah.
um so what was the question again?
Well, I was just wondering, is it a situation? I guess I was expecting a delivery situation where the order is predetermined,
Yeah,
and not something where they're picking out the strain while you're there as well.
yeah, that's something yeah, we do. It's I'm not
Oh,
really sure
okay.
how the other delivery drivers do it, but most of the ones I've ordered from down here, they let you pick out from a couple.
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have that luxury quite yet.
Yeah,
no,
it doesn't seem so much like a luxury down here anymore.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you get tipped in weed frequently?
Tipped in weed? Like, do the
Like do
customers
you?
tip me in weed?
Yeah, like with weed, or is it
No,
money for the
no,
most part?
the customers just tip me with money. My employer, he gives me like he usually gives me as much as I want, and that's like that's
Oh,
such a blessing. So like at the end of the night, like I was like, oh hey, can I have an eighth? It was like, yeah, sure, and they never really said no to anything I've asked for. It's like, wow,
Wow.
that's awesome.
the,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
amazing.
they've been incredibly generous people to me. Like sometimes they even give me a ride to work. It's like it's not that far, but it's like wow, it's just like at every step they're just like I've been surprised at how like wholehearted this whole experience has been with like my boss, the customers, and and everything really.
That's good. That's good news,
Yeah.
man. If
I
he's ever
know.
looking to franchise out in Chicago, let me know.
Chicago.
um,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
uh, what? What is the process? Are you guys like? Is it a warehouse that you bring it all from? Is there like a
Yeah,
central location that you're dispatched from, essentially?
this this is basically just like a mom and pop shop. My boss,
Okay.
he knows like three growers that he trusts, and he just like 3 5, and he just like visits them every once in a while, like buys like a couple ounces or something, and yeah, we sell out of strains like really quick. Our menu changes like every couple of days, basically, which like I don't really like that as much. I wish we had consistency, but I don't know. Well, he picks out the best ones each time, so that's probably why.
And are you driving your own car, or there's even like a company vehicle that you're
No,
driving?
he has a car, like a specific car that gets like good gas mileage.
Oh man, that's amazing. So
I know,
yeah, you're not even
I know.
using your own car.
Yeah, like yeah, like I can attest to the other people who deliver, but my bosses told me that like yeah, some other bosses don't cut their employees as much slack. They have them use their own cars and like they just have a discount instead of just getting the weed for free.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I've really lucked out.
yeah. No, that's pretty amazing, man. I'm jealous of not only your job, but just that you live in a place where that is a thing. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. We're getting there here in Ohio and whatever, but like my only experience with anything like that was in my hometown in high school, the local sub shop. Uh, the guy that worked there was one of my friends, and he was a weed
uh-huh.
dealer, and he delivered weed around town. And you didn't even need to know him. There was a specific order of a BLT pizza with extra lettuce. And if
That's
anybody
awesome.
if anybody
Oh
called
wow.
if anybody called the sub shop and asked for that, he would come over, deliver the pizza, and be like, okay, how much do you need? And break out like this like fucking 2-ounce brick of Mexican shit weed. And so like there's maybe some guy in that town that actually like his pizza order of choice is a BLT pizza with extra lettuce, who had a very awkward like interaction, like, dude, I don't smoke weed. What are you doing? But other than
Hmm.
that, like, yeah, that's my only experience with that. Um, so like it's awesome to hear that, not just in your state, but just anywhere in this country, we've gotten to a point where logic has prevailed enough that they were like, okay, yeah, hey, can you drive this plant over to this guy's house? Like,
Yeah.
so it's awesome, man. I'm like I said, I'm really jealous of your situation there. So, uh, you said that you were having that it wasn't good that you were smoking weed every day, and so like
No.
what, how so, like just motivation wise and stuff, or
Yeah,
what do you
yeah, yeah.
feel?
I'd say that it definitely gets you in like it gets you like in a rut. I'd say that definitely has a negative connotation, but it is negative.
Yeah,
Um, but I'd say the thing I've observed most is that I'm pretty prone to anxiety. It's like it's ruined a couple months out of the year for me, and and weed used to be a great tool for that. But once you start smoking weed every day, there's no consciousness shift anymore because you're always sort of high.
yeah,
So if if you could if you the there's nowhere for the anxiety to go then. If you're always high, then you're just at the same state all the time, basically. And getting sober doesn't really make anxiety go away that
y-
much.
yeah,
So it's like that's a bit of the rut right there. And so yeah, it's a it's definitely something I need to get out of. But I've done it before. I've put it down for a while when I went on vacation. But like when I have it like in front of me, like I just don't have the nerve to just to take it out and put it in a drawer and say like no.
yeah, yeah. I've struggled at that as well, man, and for as much as I feel that the cannabis plant is a staff of life, as Terrence McKenna put it. It it just can fall victim to overuse, much like anything
Oh yeah,
else,
of
that
course.
it requires moderation just like everything else.
Hmm.
And that's one reason, like I have started, um like I smoke at night or hit a vape pen or something like that. Um but anytime I do it during the day, because I've found that that's like when I just like, can either not have motivation or get um, too anxious, like you were saying, if I get high
Hmm.
during the day, especially if I smoke it. But I have started, I make these cannabis capsules, And they I put CBD in it, and I'm trying to get like a 1-to-1 ratio of THC and CBD in one dose in one pill. They're made with like coconut oil and soy lecithin is like, and that's basically the ingredients: weed, those two things, and CBD. Um, I don't know, because like I don't know the percentage of the weed that I'm able to get. I don't know what the milligrams are of the THC, but I think I've got it pretty close to a 1-to-1 ratio. And the CBD added in there, it's really mellow.
Hmm.
It's like if I want to be blazed, I take 2 pills. If I just want a good, like, uplifting, good conscious headspace, I just take 1. I could work on it, drive on it, all that. Like, and so I don't do that every day, but like I take it almost like I would like a microdose of mushrooms, like just a couple times a week when I'm going to have a really good day. And it's really awesome, and it's totally different to where my last job, like I could smoke at work, like in the woods and stuff like that. And the guys I was with were all stoners too. And so like
Hmm.
we were bored and stoners. Like we smoked weed or vaped on a vape pen all day, and like I just got into this habit of like I would end up having like a fucking weed nap at 1 o'clock after lunch, and like every day. And I got in a really big rut in everything else in my life. Like it definitely had a negative uh effect on my life. Smoking weed, like to that point, getting that high every day during the day, like it really was not productive.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with the same thing, man, and I think most people that spend a good, several years of their life smoking, uh, kind of go in the ebbs and flows of this. But what I've learned and what I've been doing recently is just either using it as I used to use it as a reward. That's a good way of using it, I think, like at the
Oh,
end of a very
uh-huh.
productive day, just chilling. But what I've done and used it for now is before my as like a pre-workout. Like, I'm not getting
Oh,
blitzed. I'm not getting blitzed or
uh-huh.
anything, but I've been doing this thing where I wake up super early in the morning, go to right to the gym. Before I go,
Hmm.
right after my coffee, I'll hit my vape pen a couple times. And the sweat that you get, it honestly feels like you're shedding a skin, like how much sweat you get. And I don't know if
Huh.
that's like, the drop of any anxious veil, where I'm just like completely focused and dedicated then to my workout. But I did the same thing today when I went to go play basketball, and another day of great results. And and I don't know, like it gives you. What I found is that for me personally, I kind of helps me hone into whatever I'm doing. And if I'm doing nothing, that's when the anxiety creeps in because I'm honing into. It's like looking for something to hone into,
Uh-huh.
and I'm just like watching Netflix, and it's just like, this isn't
Yeah.
that much.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember like, well, like I remember with, what's the swimmer's name, who won all
Michael
the,
Michael
Phelps.
Phelps, yeah,
yeah, right. I remember, where he got busted for using marijuana as uh, a performance enhancer. And I remember
yeah,
everyone
yeah,
like joking about that or whatever. Well, I remember this one time where I used to play, like on Sundays, I'd play touch football with a bunch of weirdo musicians around town. Like we would have this touch football game. And um like not everyone would smoke weed, but like this one day, like it turned out that like most of the guys there were weed smokers, and they were all on one team. And like the game was either tied or we were losing at halftime, and we took a halftime, and the stoner team all smoked weed and like shared a bowl, so we each got like just like 2 hits, because I think that's kind of the key too, is to just take
yep.
like a little bit. And we fucking dominated. It was a switch got turned on. I returned a kickoff for a touchdown, which is ridiculous because it's 2-hand touch, and I'm a big giant, goofball that runs like a cannonball. Like, I mean, and yeah, and I caught like 2 touchdown passes. Like, I mean, it was like all of us just dominated, and like we were all laughing about it, you know, getting beers after the game. Like they're like, "Fuck, man, weed is a performance enhancer," you know.
Yeah, yeah, dude, and what I've realized since I've been waking up, like the high that you get when um you haven't like digested anything mentally during the day, so like you haven't checked your phone, you haven't dove into the surrounding world, is completely different than the midday or the nighttime where you already went through everything, and it's a lot cleaner, and I haven't noticed any anxiety in the morning from smoking yet. And like, I'm going to like a populated gym, there's a ton of people working out before they go to work, and I still haven't noticed it. And I think a lot of it has to do with I haven't like muddied my brain yet, I guess you could say, for the day,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You still got a lot of, you got, that's probably your most energetic time that you can have, almost, and
Exactly. Yeah.
you got the coffee going too, I'm sure, and
Yep.
I think there's, I think two things. There's a synergy between cannabis and
Caffeine.
caffeine.
Yeah.
Caffeine.
My buddy really likes Sean, that was on the show when we were talking about tripping up in New York and stuff. He's a big hunter, and that's his favorite thing, is to get like the strongest like espresso coffee he can, and like smoke like a big fat joint, and then go sit out in the woods, and
Mhm.
he's like zoned in on the environment and stuff. But I think
Yeah.
I think the other thing with why weed's good with like working out and stuff is the rules of set and setting apply with cannabis just as much as they do with psychedelics,
Hmm.
And if you are smoking weed on the couch, well, you're going to have a really killer couch experience, like that's what you're going to get from it, and the intention and all that. It just goes into that as well. So if your intent and your set and setting is like, I'm going to go work out, you're going to have like a really good workout or football game or whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely a synergy between those two, and it's a enjoyable one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've for me, I can definitely compare my weed addiction to a coffee addiction. Out of all of the other addictions, like I look at people who like drink coffee and like maybe jitter a bit or like really sort of like low down before they have their morning cup. Like those are sort of the levels of effects that I probably deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I'm probably definitely addicted to caffeine. I'm not there on the weed part yet, but I do think like adding like only in my perspective, but what I've noticed with uh, working out too with it, it's like I think it helps eliminate any future anxieties from smoking later on in the day as well, because you're just running on such a cleaner mental engine from the workout. So it's like it's almost like you just do all the prep work and all the execution right when you wake up, so that the rest of the day is within your control. And that's I don't know. That's what I've been like taking notes on, and I guess observing my own behavior. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, I guess it would make sense to have like a morning ritual to like define your day and like center you into
Hmm.
into not letting it like flop into something that you don't like at the end.
Well, I think yeah, all the things we get mad at ourselves about are all bad habits, and it's like it's so hard to form new habits, but I like using that word ritual better, because it I don't know, it makes it seem like it's more of a practice than it is like something, mad at yourself for not doing something. It's like
Hmm.
I'm practicing trying to maintain rituals, and to have that in the morning, which, Stan, like you said, you've been waking up early, like that's
Hmm.
kind of the key to establishing those rituals or those habits. It's like, how many of us, I know I'm one of them, we set our alarm to wake up as late as possible, which means that we're going to have as little time as possible
Yep,
to
you're gonna be
do,
rushed.
yeah, that turns our ritual into running around, getting dressed and brushing your teeth and drinking coffee and getting out the door or whatever. Um, so I think getting up earlier, um, and having that time to establish a ritual, whatever it may be, uh, is kind of key to that whole process.
Yeah, and I do think like it can go beyond physical activity. It could be meditation. It could be even just like the act of journaling. First thing in the morning,
Yeah.
you write down what you're thinking about. I think, uh, like you were saying, Oliver, like the grounding process is very vital because you can definitely it's a slippery slope. Once
Oh,
you
of
start
course.
making bad decisions, it
Hmm.
makes it that much easier to make the next bad decision. And I don't even
Hmm.
mean, you know, it, it's not detrimental to society decisions. It's detrimental to a productive day decisions. And those are small or big as you want them to be.
I know exactly what you mean. I have ADHD, so on top of
Okay.
being high most of the time, I'm also sort of just hyper focused and also easily distracted. And so, yeah, like those two combinations have been interesting in times. Like especially it's easier to like get obsessed with like a video game for like 3 hours
Oh,
straight,
yeah.
or like if I have to clean my room, I can instantly see something and like boom, distraction right there. And so
Yeah.
uh, definitely that has been a barrier for me to have like a regular pattern of behavior that just leads to something up instead of down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Like I like to think that I don't have ADHD, but I was diagnosed when I was, 17, 18, and I
Oh,
did
okay.
the whole Vyvanse route for uh 2 years of my life, and that
Hmm.
went to shit. That was horrible.
Oh,
Um
huh.
so I do deal with the same things that you're talking about. It's the act of staying focused is one of my greatest challenges every day.
Hmm. I've been wanting to delve into meditation, but just the act of standing still and quieting your mind is intimidating to someone like me.
Mhm. Dude, you should try I'm sure you've heard of Wim Hof, but you should try his method. Like
Oh.
what I like
Hmm.
most about his method is there's instant results. It's not something where you don't know if it worked. You'll start feeling your body feeling wavy and buzzing a little bit, and it's just the proof is right there in the first session that you can easily get hooked. And that's a form of meditation right there.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really I don't know how much his YouTube videos you've seen or anything, but it's pretty awesome. Like I don't it's one of the things going back to rituals that I like want to start doing in the morning because I think it's a fucking killer thing to do in the morning. It really just like vitalizes you or invigorates you and
Perfect. Yeah.
and it is meditation because like it's so intense like breathing wise that like you can't think about nothing else, like that's one of the hardest things with meditation is like to just focus on your breath, and then you don't notice yourself like your thoughts drifting off of your breath, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about the shopping list or something, and then you're like, I was
Hmm.
breathing. The Wim Hof is so intense that like that's all you're focusing on is the breath, like you're not thinking about anything else, so it's totally meditation for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd heard of that before, but I don't think I ever knew what it was.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard I think we were talking about it in our last episode, but combining it with a float tank is
Oh.
it's really awesome, or
Uh-huh.
But so yeah, to move on from cannabis and stuff, like what's your psychedelic experience like? Have you
Uh,
experienced a lot of that stuff?
yes, I have. From weed, I moved on to LSD. It was a friend introduced it, and so he had a cabin in the woods, and we just all go up there and listen to records, put on some stupid DVD like Joe versus the volcano or something like that, and yeah, that was how we experienced psychedelics first, and that was at first it was just funny feelings and funny images. Uh, but it's really been in the past couple like 2 years for me. I've started delving into Terrence McKenna, the whole 5 grams throughout the whole, like examining yourself through the psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
And and I've I wouldn't say I've had a lot of results with like improving myself, honestly. I'm I'm one of those people that's like very I can analyze my problems very easily and sort of see them in my head, but it's hard for me to do things about them.
Hmm. I think that's where like the integration comes in, and I think that's what's been good about well, I know for Stan and I, like having this podcast and talking about it, and I think for the guests that have been on to talk about it, but then also like just the way our community goes with the Discord server and stuff like that, like just talking about it and integrating, you know, those realizations you have with tripping or
Hmm.
whatever. And integrating that into your life, be like, that's why I felt that. That's why I still do. It kind of that's what inspires everyone to do something about it and to improve themselves. I feel like I don't know.
Hmm.
I think that's what a lot of people, that have uh, joined us on this ride or whatever, kind of feel. Because if you look at our Discord, like it ends up being like this, like at first glance, it would look like a new age self help forum or something like that,
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think that's kind of why that's all part of the integration of psychedelic trips. I feel like.
Have you found psychedelics helping you, execute on any of those issues or no?
Um, I would say so. Definitely, they they let me look at myself differently. Um, and definitely sort of moments where I would have had anxiety, they were replaced by sort of revelations that sort of blew them away. Like
Ooh,
one time
nice.
I did one time I did acid at a rave, and those that's not really my thing. But like a friend was like, "Come on, come on, come on," and I was like, I'll do it. I'll try it. I'll do it once." And so I'm just looking at all these people and all these like weird costumes that they just thought up themselves with all these weird like banners and things they're flying, and it sort of made me realize that like they like I feel like I'm full of shit like sometimes, but in that moment I just looked at all these people and I'm like, all these people are are full of shit too. Like not in like a bad way,
No,
but
in a
like
great way.
yeah, they're here putting themselves out there just like searching for like like a culture. Like it seems like, well, when I looked at that, it seems like it reminded me of a very like tribal image. Like it seemed like in our society we don't have anything like that to the equivalent of like putting on some sort of dress skirt and like dancing around a fire like that. And it seems like that might be like even like a primal human need. And so when I was just like seeing all this, it just made me feel so much better, like not knowing what I was doing, because it made me realize like nobody else does either, but you can just slap on any sort of costume, like dance around in this laser show, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, you can kind of, reclassify your problems to not being
Hmm.
problems. And
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I'd say that there are a lot of times when my anxiety has come into play and made a problem seem like something it absolutely was not.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and definitely when you take psychedelics, you can look maybe not at a current situation, but definitely a past situation and realize like, oh wow, like I could have done things a whole lot differently. My life could have been a whole lot easier if I just didn't play into this mental trap.
Hmm. Yeah, it could be something that's been on your mind consistently for days, and it just gives you that moment of acceptance to let it go and move on. At
Mhm.
least from my own experiences with whatever's been nagging at me mentally, uh, a lot of, at least my last mushroom trip, it was like it made sense of any of the issues. It was like, all right, it's time to get over that, and but it's okay that you were dealing with it, but guess what, the time is up and now it's time to let it go and accept that you're moving forward. And I
Mhm.
mean, that's so powerful with any issue.
Yeah. Another thing about that psychedelics made me realize is that like powerful emotions in themselves are like a trip. Like there have been times when my anxiety has just been so bad that it's like that's almost the equivalent of a bad trip. And and another thing that psychedelics taught me, which I think is like a great visual metaphor, is that your thoughts are like you walking. If you if you're in like a bad, terrible spot, you can walk out of it. It may just seem hard, but you can. Like like I don't know. I'm a person that's sort of prone to when I'm in certain situations, I can really nestle into them in a negative way. I can be like, all right, like this is it. I accept that this is just a terrible thing that will not change. And then when you take a psychedelic, all of a sudden you're looking at yourself from the other end and you're like, wow, like that person there could get up, walk away to this space that they would just enjoy themselves in, but they choose to sit here. And it's and definitely visual metaphors like that are what I think are the closest to helping me change for the better at this point, psychedelics wise.
Yeah. Well, it's almost an altered state in itself, just imagining, envisioning that the metaphor, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But dude, what you said about emotions being the trip, I mean, this is so true. You could make, I mean, even on the high end of the spectrum, you know, and when everything's going great, it can feel like intense and mania,
Yeah.
and you know.
Hmm. Well, yeah. It's when you think about it, sort of every sort of emotion is a different altered state of consciousness, kind of. If
Yeah, no, it
you,
is.
suppose you can put it that way.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, I was like thinking about well, specifically anxiety, but I mean I guess it works for other emotions that like they have as much of a like I think the term I was thinking in my head was body high. Like I was thinking of like mushrooms and like the everyone is like the body high like was intense or something like that. And it's
Hmm.
usually hinting towards like an unpleasant thing. Well, it's like that I get that same exact feeling of what I attribute to when people say the term body high with mushrooms. Uh I get that same thing with anxiety.
Mm.
So it's like it's triggering the same uh, you know, hormones or whatever internal chemicals, neurotransmitters and everything, that make you feel like tense and all, the physical sensation of emotions exists, and like mushrooms bring that out and help you notice that. And I think it makes you more aware, going forward, that like I'm feeling that means I'm just anxious. Like I just need to like focus on that not being that way, and you won't feel that way anymore. And I think like I've kind of noticed myself um getting over anxiety, especially with like um microdosing has helped that too, because it kind of like gives you enough of like a baseline body high from it that like you feel that like changing. I guess I'm not real sure, but I don't know. I've noticed that with myself, that with emotions.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Dude, so you mentioned that you're getting into like Terrence and 5 dry grams and all that.
Yeah,
Have you
I've
done
been
that?
no, I'm scared. I'm quivering in my boots at the mere
Yeah.
thought. But no, I've been definitely delving into Terrence a lot. It's a rabbit hole I'm I'm eviscerating. Um, I was recently listening to an audiobook of his True was it True Hallucinations?
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
La
yeah.
Chirera book.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my god.
Yeah, I love that.
That's
Yeah.
that's a meaty piece of literature.
Yeah.
I yeah, when I deliver I try to just marathon it, but that's a hard thing to listen to for when you binge it.
Yeah.
Ugh, like when you have to, at some points you just have to turn them off on some note and just breathe. It's exhausting.
I can't remember. Is that the one like that he's reading the audiobook?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
There's one
right.
on
Yeah.
YouTube that's like 9 hours long, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
yeah, and at points it has these like really cheesy sound effects and these really bad
Yeah.
pictures of elves and fairies. It's like, oh, this is
Yeah. Yeah.
this is this is not the direction it should be in.
Yeah, I love his voice though. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
He's
of
hypnotic to listen
course.
to. Yeah.
Hmm.
You should check out I think I've mentioned this book on every episode of the podcast, but Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss,
Yeah.
because or anything. Even if I haven't looked on YouTube too much, but anything with Dennis McKenna telling his account of the La Chorrera is pretty cool too, because it goes into a little more of what he was going through, to where like Terrence's recollection was he didn't know what the hell his brother was doing, so like to
Hmm.
hear his brother's account too, like that was a crazy fucking moment in time, was that week or whatever that they were down there.
Yeah.
I love thinking, I mean, one of my favorite things about the both of them, like I treasure Dennis McKenna just as much as Terrence. And one of my favorite things about the both of them, and specifically like listening to that book or listening to True Hallucinations or reading the Dennis McKenna book, and thinking about this time where, uh, on the surface, this was just some college students going down and tripping their faces off on mushrooms in the jungle.
Yeah.
And if you didn't understand the psychedelic culture and the history of psychedelics in not just America but the world, um, like you would just be like, yeah, they're just crazy or whatever, and then they just ended up being professional druggies or whatever. Whatever uh, normies think about like psychedelic heroes like that. Um, you know, if you look, like they took spores in, like they put them in their clothes, and
Hmm.
like they took back all these spores. Like their whole thing that they got out of that was like, we need to fucking grow these mushrooms. And not only did they do that, but they wrote the first, psilocybin mushroom growers guide. Um, and I believe they sold mushrooms as well. They sold spore kits, grow kits, everything. Like I think they just really, aside from their lectures and books and stuff that their careers, um, they don't talk about it too much, but like they made a lot of money, or at least like you know uh, were the cause of lots of people growing and making money off of it and everything. And it's just crazy that it came from that trip, and that's not even what they went down there to find. Like that's the other thing that's crazy, is they were looking for ayahuasca, and they ended up changing the course of like history of the species of humans and psilocybin mushrooms. And that's what I love about that book, man, about True Hallucinations, is just like thinking about that. Like that was a true fucking turning point for uh, uh, at least consciousness of man.
Oh, I'd never thought about it like that. Like, I hadn't thought about the culture of growing shrooms and its distribution before
Hmm.
they introduced it.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a bad idea. Well, it was so like uh, uh, illegal that they like that those books are not in their name. Like they made up, pseudonyms or whatever.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's like T-os and something. I
Hmm.
can't remember. There was a reasoning for it, but yeah, the is it the Magic Mushroom Growers Guide or the
Great.
Psilocybin Mushroom, whatever it's called? It's under two different names because like they were in serious shit, like if they got if people knew it was them. But and yeah, I mean they really, that was like the start of everything. Now there's everything online, but I mean I want to say it was like early 80s when they came out with that book. It might have even been the 70s. I can't remember, but it was a big deal. I mean, you could chase it down the line. Uh, any mushroom that any of us or anyone listening that lives in the United States, like you ate that mushroom because Terrence McKenna and Dennis McKenna went down there and had the experiment at La Chorrera. Like it kind of was the rebirth of mushrooms in the
Hmm.
United States.
I remember at one point in the audiobook, he was saying how when they were performing the ritual, it felt like that everyone in the entire world had felt it. Like
Yeah,
they had shifted a magnitude of something
yeah,
that everyone could feel, and everyone thought someone did it. Someone finally raised roof level of consciousness or whatever it was he was trying to get at.
Yeah.
But yeah, but in a way, he did. It just took time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, I totally, on all the stuff that like Terrence McKenna said, he was smoking DMT and everything. Like, uh, the experiment at La Chorrera, I don't know, man. It felt the biggest to me, like it felt the
Mm-hmm.
realest and the biggest, like that I
Oh,
could
of course.
totally, I could totally feel what both of them say about that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
that trip defined their lives.
yeah. Yeah. No, it's nuts. Yeah. And, I've probably nowhere near the magnitude of what they felt about like that feeling of like everybody is getting it right now. Like it's like a feeling of oneness. I kind of feel like that's a component of like what everyone calls ego death. And I know that you wanted to uh like talk about ego death. So like is
Yeah,
that does that kind of oneness or like everybody being in tune, um like have you felt that with ego death, or what's
I
your take on it?
I I'm honestly not too sure. Ego death is one of those terms that you can't entirely be sure what the person who you're talking to, how that person perceives that word or
Yeah,
how they say that word. And
exactly. Yeah.
it's an experience to you have to experience it first and then you talk about it. And I thought I had experienced that. Well, I still think I do. Um, like at one point, I just looked in the mirror like deep into a trip, and I felt like uh, I I was seeing my face for the first time, and my mind felt just clean, smooth. Like the term tabula rasa came to mind. I was just a blank slate, and I'm pretty sure that was at least a step towards ego death.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is such a buzzword though. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I think I've had a couple YouTube videos talking about ego death, and like I think they pull about the biggest amount of trolls. Like it's like if you talk about dosage or ego death or heroic dose, if you have any psychedelic video talking about that brings the most trolls because those are the buzzwords. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, ego death is like uh, I don't know. I think the term death, the death component of it is that like you do feel like you're dying or have died, and that you're never going to
Yes.
be the same.
Yes.
And I think the ego part is attributed to like knowing your name, knowing who is around you, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think like if you expand that further, like not even knowing you're human, not knowing what human is, feeling like you're a ball of light, like those things are all ego death.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but you know, like I've gotten to a point where I didn't know my name. I was trying to look at pictures on the wall and the faces were all blurry. Like it wasn't, I couldn't tell who was what or what they were supposed to be, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then at the same time, I was like wanting to go outside and yell for help because like I thought I was dying or I thought I
Mm-hmm.
poisoned myself, stuff like that, to where like maybe that's not breaking through, but it's like ego death. Like I had those two components of the literal term. But in describing those experiences, and again, I'm not trying to like talk about why internet trolls are trolls, but like not even in a trolling way, people be like that isn't ego death, bro, or whatever. Um, but like I think any degree of severity in those two components at the same time, you could use the buzzword term ego death. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yes. Yes, it
Yeah,
does.
yeah. But it's funny because like I feel like with psychedelics, it's a very difficult and challenging like thing to get to that. But that's like again to describe why like buzzwords are the way they are. Like the other buzzword is heroic dose, where people just like argue about what that dose is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like if you are taking something that is going to make you feel like you died and forget who you are and who your kids are or whatever, but you know that you're going to be a better person after it's done. So you do it anyway. Like, that's fucking heroic. Whatever dose it takes to accomplish that, it comes down to biology at that point. But like, yeah, there isn't a dose attached to it. That is a heroic thing to do. And so, like, I don't know. That's how I kind of define those two terms.
I think you nailed it on the head.
Yeah. Yeah. But, again, I probably argue with trolls too much and worry what YouTube commenters think more than I should. But, in doing so, that's just kind of like thinking I've had about that. But I try not to look at the comments as much. I don't know, like, Stan will, send me something like, "Hey, upvote this on Reddit," and I'll be like, "Dude, if I do that, I'm gonna spend the next week arguing with some asshole, that I don't know."
Yeah, dude, it's such a subjective term that it's hard to nail down. But I think you did put the characteristics down that are at least the most common, which is like not knowing your surroundings.
Yeah.
And you can heighten that to like you said, not knowing who you are, what you are. But it really does just start out with like surroundings. And I even think like the basic of like the very baseline of not understanding time when, like, you're tripping and you're like, wait, what time is it? And then you look at the clock and you're like, wait, we've been tripping for 40 minutes. What's 40 minutes? 40 minutes from what? Wait, what's time? And like that.
Yeah.
That's, I think, is part of it too.
Yeah. Well, I had a thing, and I might have talked about. I think this was my 5 gram video, but regardless, like, I was looking at like my wife's like clock radio, and like, so I had enough of an ego to know, like, hey, this thing tells me what time it is. I had I guess that word time still in my head. So, which means obviously the ego's still there or whatever. But when I looked at it, the numbers looked exactly like the numbers in the Predator movie, like when he's like setting a bomb on his arm. Like, that's what it looked like. And I like shook my head and I was like, ugh. And the same thing happened when I tried to take my temperature because I thought I was dying. And the thermometer, like the numbers were like just the same LCD gobbledygook or whatever. And I like, that was a very vivid, even if it was a hallucination or whatever, but I take it as like my brain could not make that connection. Like, that much of my ego was gone, or temporarily muted or whatever, that like numbers just didn't exist, and I think that's the only thing, like, yeah, you can keep increasing the dosage and everything becomes more foreign, for sure. And I understand that, and I'm scared of it, honestly, but I like, I think it's like, once you reach a certain level, like that's ego death. And it's like I was saying, how it's hard. It's very scary too, to do with psychedelics. And I think like the goal, to go back to what we were talking about with like meditation, is like to be able to just shut those parts of your brain off without having to take a substance, and that's like kind of the goal. I feel of meditation. I'm not saying I've gotten there. But I think that's the connection, like, that we're like working towards, maybe, or that, some people say, but that are like deep into meditation and yoga and stuff like that they get that same kind of ego death, and just being in the moment and not having anything else influence that moment. Like, that's what you're trying to do with meditation. That's kind of why I think psychedelics and meditation kind of go hand in hand, because they like help each other that way, I guess. I don't know. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yeah, no, definitely. And just to add to that, I mean, what's the saying is like the goal of the psychonaut is to take less and less each time. Yeah. So I was watching a documentary on Vice that was released on their YouTube channel, and I think the playlist it's in is called High Society, and this guy goes to a group psilocybin trip, and it was packed, like 50 to 100 people in that thing, all taking mushrooms and just like in a warehouse basically. But
Mm.
what they did, I don't know dose wise, but it didn't seem like a lot. But the first thing they did as like the effects started to come on was a variation of Wim Hof and a variation of like kind of controlled hyperventilation. And he reported after that, like, that brought on the effects so much more that it seemed as if you didn't really need the crazy amounts of the substance, because you have this variable that you can control yourself. uh
Yeah.
and I like you said, just meditating, like I'm sure meditating while meditating for an hour or two during the height of the trip can just increase it just as much. So it's really
Yeah.
just like, yeah, like just trying to find ways to take less, and the ultimate goal, which I like you did say, I don't know if I'll ever get to that, where you can just like meditate to the point of like nothingness and just still now, you know. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'll ever make it there, but I do think adding that to the low doses could bring great results. I mean, even Wim Hof with cannabis, or meditating
Yeah.
with cannabis, is just like a whole different beast than just the substance alone.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and okay, I kind of look at it like this. Like I would get on myself, like even just about using guided meditation, let alone substances. I'd be like, no, I need to train myself to sit and silent meditate. I'd get like upset that I couldn't do it and be like, oh, maybe uh, my brain's fucked up and like I can't shut it off or whatever. And it's more like, okay, do whatever you got to do, you do you or whatever, like you like if it takes a little bit of cannabis to have a really effective meditation, well then do it that way, if it takes a guided meditation, if it takes, you got to be naked in a kiddie pool in your backyard, whatever it takes, man, do it, like there isn't a, I know like you can take meditation classes, honestly, and there's, you know, classes and training and all that shit. But like, you just got to find out what works for you to get in the now. And if you know it only works when you're on psychedelics, if it only works when you're on campus, cool, whatever, do it that way. You know, and so it just unfortunately that means like maybe it's not going to be a daily thing, especially if like you need psychedelics to get good meditation in. But like it can be just as effective. And so like that's where I've kind of been at, is like, because I can't meditate every day,
Yeah.
but when I do and I take those cannabis pills with the CBD in it and I'm just like really in the zone, it is awesome. If I go in a float tank, it's awesome. If I do Wim Hof, it's awesome. But I can't do it every day, and I definitely can't do it without those things.
Yeah. Well, and how weird is it that's like, at least in my experience, like the self-sabotaging mind of saying, wait, no, you should just do it sober. If you can't just do it sober, then you can't do it,
Yeah, yeah,
like I don't know, I always go back to what you said a couple episodes ago. It's always stuck with me, is like the universe just rewards you being in the now. And if that means,
Mhm.
you know like you said, smoking before you go work out, or like for me today when I was playing basketball, it was something as simple as leaving my fleece on while I warmed up and played. I was like, there's a ton of people here, they're gonna look at me weird. It's like, why am I listening to that side of my thoughts? Like, I feel comfortable in this. It's gonna help me warm up. Like I just came from outside; it was cold, so I just roll with this, and this will help you perform better and be in the now when you're playing in the actual game.
yeah,
So it's just odd how I don't know, it might just be like Catholic guilt or something, that that it's just like, no, you have to do it by the books. It's weird.
yeah, yeah. The it sucks, man. I've bought my wife like meditation books like almost every year, and like she never gets into it and whatever. And it's like I don't even think that you need a book, but it's like I just know how my wife is, and like she's more likely to do something if it's like because this book tells me how and whatever, and this is the book I'm into. But I definitely don't think there's anything needed, like other than, I mean, I have Spotify and I do the guided meditations on there or whatever. But
I mean, the biggest component is like the desire to do it.
Yeah.
And like you said, you get a book every year for your wife, but if she doesn't want to do it, it's not going to be the time.
Yeah.
Just like anything else.
Yeah.
I've been using this like therapy app thing. It's like a Headspace, I think it's called.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, well, I've been trying to, at least. But whenever I use it, it's kind of ironic. Like they tell you to relax and to breathe, and I always like like secondary doubting thoughts always appear. Like, am I breathing at the right time? Should I go back and listen to the other lessons to make sure that like I didn't miss anything? Like, and and then the ironic thing about that is that those are the exact things that you need to uh, address. Well, like those intruding thoughts. I mean, the fact that you you allow yourself to have these doubts wriggle in that are like unnecessary and just waste processing power in your brain.
Yeah. Well, it's all that default mode network. Have you like seen or heard anything about that?
It rings a bell, but well, what is it?
So like if you do I don't know if it's MRI or nah, it's probably not MRI. Whatever the scan is where they can see your brain, and
Yeah,
and
that's
and that
MRI.
is it MRI, like
Yeah.
the activity in it. Okay. So if they have someone just like in there not doing anything,
Hmm.
there's a certain area that goes on, and there's just this kind of like dull roar going on like right in the middle of their brain. And there's certain things that when you do that it shuts off or whatever. But one thing, if you take a person and give them a psychedelic and put them in and give them the same MRI and they're not doing anything, that default mode network is not going on. And so they basically, I guess, to dumb that down into what's going on is like, all those thoughts, all that fucking where you're like trying to just not do anything, but all of a sudden you're like, oh fuck, I didn't fold the laundry, it's in the dryer and the stuff's in the, or whatever. And like you just got those little things going on, or even big ideas, even if you're trying to think or whatever. It's just like going off,
Hmm.
like your brain just fucking like, oh, we're not doing nothing. All right, how about this shit? And like
Hmm.
whatever happens. And
Yeah.
to where psychedelics turn that off. So it's like it's the default mode network. And I think that, I guess, that's another way of explaining what I was saying about like achieving the same stuff with meditation than you do with psychedelics, is learning how to control your brain to the point to you can turn that off without taking anything,
Hmm.
and that's what you're experiencing with uh certain levels of ego death, when you're just like all the stuff just is noise and you're just focusing on the now and your
Hmm.
spirit, and that's a big thing, is like I think any level of ego death, you still exist as a spirit, you still feel your spirit. And that's not part of the default mode network. The default mode network is all the shit in life, I think. It's like your brain just throws all the like surface shit in your life like at you to analyze.
So everything is just distraction ultimately.
Yeah. Or it's a screensaver. That's what I kind of look at it too. If your brain was a
Everything is a
computer,
screensaver.
if your brain was a computer, the default mode network is the little spiky ball thing bouncing around the corners of your monitor.
Yeah, I was listening to some psychedelic guy. I think was it Sam Harris?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that somebody? Yeah, he was talking about how oh, what was it? That the brain was actually, it might be a limiting. There might be a limiting element to it. So when you take psychedelic, it actually decreases this natural limiter, so you see the world in this awestruck, beautiful way that you that it naturally is. But in order for us to survive, in order for us to reproduce, to eat, we can't be continually awestruck in this wonderland. We have to go, oh yeah, that's a tree. Is there something I can kill and eat on it? And 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 then that was a really weird idea I had not heard of, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
opened up a lot of doors in my mind once I considered it.
That's I don't know if Aldous Huxley came up with the idea or it may have
I think
existed
it
before,
was.
but it was in the Doors of Perception. He talks about that. He calls
Hmm.
it the reducing valve, to where there's and it makes sense. You could even explain that with a little bit of physics, right? In that, if you look at the spectrum of electromagnetic frequencies or whatever, visible light, what our eyes detect is like half of it. There's colors, ultraviolet, and all these colors that we can't even see. We can't perceive them. They're going into our eye. They're hitting our body, but we can't see it. That sounds pretty fucking psychedelic, but that's a physics 101 kind of idea about light.
Hmm.
And so you could expand that to a lot of different things, that our brain, and not even our brain, but just all of the sense organs of the human body at this stage of our evolution, is bombarded with all of the different senses, and maybe even more we don't know, but we don't have the apparatus, or
Hmm.
apparati, I think would be the correct term, to like perceive them. And so
Hmm.
like it makes sense, with consciousness as well. And that's what Aldous Huxley was talking about in that book with the reducing valve, is that like we only perceive what we need to eat, sleep, and fuck, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's I don't know, psychedelics in the brain, like it's just a crazy topic, and it's one of the I'm interested in seeing psychedelics grow and become more accepted for mental health and like therapeutic, holistic wellness kind of reasons for just people everywhere. But the other thing is to really study the brain and consciousness, and
Hmm.
it's great to see that those are the two things that are going on, with psychedelics, and then it's expanding it and increasing at a pretty fast rate. Um, but I think both of those avenues really help humanity as a whole, and I guess that's the whole like help find the others thing, is like, we're all in this together or whatever. But yeah, I can't remember when we talked last weekend, if um did we have any other topics to talk about?
I did have some weird trip reports, I guess. I did want to discuss a few of them
Oh
if
yeah, dude.
that's
Yeah.
on
Yeah, go
topic.
for it, man.
Yeah, well, I suppose the first I think this is the most psychedelic experience I ever had. Me and my friends, we used to do like acid every like month or so, and one of the times we did it, it was the last of it. It had been in my friend's fridge for like 2 weeks or something. It was really watered down. We'd experienced the trip for like maybe like 3 hours, 4 hours. Like, so we were into it, and we went back to his house after just walking around, just just for like water things. And so I was wanting an experience, so I had an edible on me, and I just took a big chunk. I don't even know what the milligrams were, and I'd given my friend, sold my friend some Adderall, and when I went to put the cap away, I noticed a little bit of dust on my finger, and I looked at it and I thought, fuck it, and I licked it. And so I was good for about 45 minutes, I'd say. So me and my friend, we walked to a street corner, we just sat down, started talking about life, and all of a sudden, sort of the lampposts start like, and the trees start bending like they're in an old timey cartoon, just sort of wiggling and wobbling, and everything sort of moving and convulsing. And it's a really big trip. Like at the time, it seemed like I had taken like 9 tabs or something. And
Yeah.
then I started hearing. primal chanting and drumming.
Oh, jeez.
And I know, and at the time, I'd never had any connotation of like primal chanting and drumming in an experience like this. Like I didn't think I was like channeling the elders or anything like that. This was just something I had heard. And then and then I closed my eyes and I was rocking back and forth and I was launched upward like the rocket ship feeling when you go up on DMT. Like that, something equivalent happened. And I met like three entities. And I'd never heard of an entity before in a drug context. And these things, I felt surprise and anger from them. And that I don't know how I knew this, but they felt like parasitic, like they had been leeching on me in some way. And like I broke free of them in one giant burst. And in that moment, it felt like I had remembered every epiphany I'd ever forgotten. I'm not sure if that's what actually happened, but that's what it felt like. And then for about, I'm not sure how long it was, but after that came down, I was in a weird mental place where it felt like I was just untying all of these knots of thoughts, and I couldn't. It felt like I was insane a little bit. That my head was just swimming endlessly until it just came to a stop, and that was basically it. So
that's
yeah,
nuts. Yeah.
I know, and yeah, so it's weird. I never heard of someone experiencing entities, at least on LSD for the most part,
Yeah.
especially.
So
Yeah.
so there's like no way to tell like what dosage that was, right? Like it was just dust.
No,
Like, yeah.
it was dust. So it was
But
a tiny amount
but I think it was a lot because if you think about it,
comparatively.
like if you can actually see the crystals, like I think that's a lot. Like a normal hit of like 100 micrograms, say, like in powder, that's like probably invisible. You know, I mean that is such a small weight. Um, so I mean, like it's possible you did in the like. Well, I don't know. I'd have to see like how much it was or whatever, but like, yeah, like you said, 9 tabs or so. I think you could have taken at least 10. You know, it sounds like because I mean,
Yeah.
I've experienced visuals that crazy on LSD, but I wouldn't say they were um uh entities because I could tell what they were. Like I didn't have the ego death component of that.
Yeah.
But I witnessed clear as day situations happening that weren't happening, like hypothetical situations in real time, uh enough to get scared of them and run away. Like I don't know if you heard that story, but I won't tell the whole story, but that was in a episode or one of my YouTube videos. But you know, I pictured the cops, I saw the cops coming in the house and ran from them, but that never happened. And
Huh.
like but yeah, like I think if you take even more. Oh, and why I was saying that is like I took an indeterminate amount that was a shit ton. That was like the blotter paper under where they were making sugar cubes. You know, so it's like I don't know. I've had many stone nights with friends that were there talking about how much it could have been, but you know, the general consensus is it was like a 10 strip. You know, and like so I get it, man. Like that if you go even past that, what I did, like people or visions can get so much even more sci-fi or you know out of this world. Um, so that's pretty crazy. That's you know pretty ballsy to just
I
to
know.
just lick
That's
your
not.
finger. Yeah,
Don't
but
compliment me for that. That's
well, yeah.
a that's a fault, I would say.
Well, so okay. Have you ever heard of a thumbprint of acid?
Yes, I
Okay,
think.
so it's like there's only several people that have done it, I believe. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like a rite of passage in the acid chemist world, right? And it's yeah, I think it ends up being grams or at least you know half a gram. I don't know, but I mean, you stick your whole thumb into a plate of crystal LSD and lick your thumb.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so there is a thread on I believe it's the Shroomery. um, of someone talking about that, and I can't remember. There's some guy that like ended up, someone asked like, hey, has anyone ever done a thumbprint of acid? And this is like 15, 20 years ago, maybe at this point. I don't know. Ancient post on the Shroomery. Um, and someone said, yeah, I have. Let me tell you the story. And it became like a 5,000 page thread that like still goes on to this day talking about it. And some people come in and giving their experience, some people bullshit, and some people trolling, some people fighting. And like the original guy that said like, yeah, I've done it here, and has this whole thing, it became like a ask me anything of the guy willing to talk about this like ritual of the thumbprint. And this thread went on so long, the guy's dead. Like, like they're still
Oh
talking
wow.
about him and quoting his post, but the guy actually fucking like had a heart attack and died. But there's so many pages that like if you just found it now, like you'd never get to the point, or you'd miss it, like unless you read every page of this forum thread. You wouldn't realize that this original guy died. But anyway, like that the general consensus there seems to be like, you fucking die, go to heaven, and are reborn, and decide to come back to your body. Like that's what basically everyone's, you sum up everyone's reports of it, and it's like that extreme, like you don't just meet God, you become God, like kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I know what I'm googling tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, thumbprint of LSD.
What what other stories did you have, or were there any other reports as intense?
He, there was one that was maybe not as intense, but one that was as weird. There was so I'd broken up with like sort of like my only real girlfriendish at some point, and so I just decided I'm gonna do a bit of Molly, and I'm gonna walk around the woods, and I'm just gonna have a thinking time, and I'm gonna process this. And strangely, what happened was it was a Molly trip where have you ever seen a Inside Out, the Pixar movie?
Oh
I
yeah, with
I
like
have
the
not.
emotions in the
Well,
brain and all that.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was a moral in that story that sadness, it isn't bad. It isn't a negative thing. It's just sadness. Like there can be like a complacent sadness, even a happy sadness, or that makes sense. And that's sort of what I experienced. It was sort of the exact opposite of, of Molly High. I was just really sad, but in that way where you just start crying and it feels good. Like I'm shedding these emotions, like from my eyes, from my body, and like yes, like this is what I need. I've needed this for a while, and so that was that was the trip. And so I, I, um, I came sobered up, came back down, I drove home, and then I was talking to my mom and one of her friends at the dinner table, and we were about to play a game. And then as I was explaining the rules, something really weird happened. It was, let's see if I can describe this. It was like my sense of self, my sense of center, like you know how you perceive like your consciousness, the voices in your head, they're in your head, they're up here. But what happened was it felt like that sense of center, it started coming out of my neck. Like it started bubbling into this weird other place. But my body, it was still talking and explaining the rules of this game perfectly. And so for just like a little bit, I what I remember most is the elasticity of it. I remember feeling like this was my soul or something. It was like elastically stuck out of my neck. It was halfway out there dangling in this space. Like if you never knew what water was, and then all of a sudden you started drowning, what would what would that feel like? Like you never even knew what the concept of water was. And that's sort of the closest I can describe it. I was drowning in this space I had never experienced before, somewhat outside of my body. And then once I had finished explaining the rules, all of a sudden I just blooped back into my neck, and then they neither of the two of them gave any indication that anything weird had happened. And then I just sort of sat there and I was like, huh, that was odd. So, and that, so I'm not even sure if that had anything to do with the Molly. I don't know if that was just a natural, spontaneous, what you might call it, astral projection of some sort. Yeah. So that was the weirdest trip I'd say I'd ever I've ever been on.
Yeah, I mean, I yeah, I hate when people say that Maui isn't psychedelic because it's not as overpowering, but it's just as powerful, if that makes sense. Like you're not on a ride as much as mushrooms, and you're not as like anxious and shit as like acid, but it's kind of like you're still gonna experience really weird, almost dissociative kind of stuff like that. I don't know. Does that sound like a good term to
Yeah,
explain?
dissociative. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
think
from what you
so. I think
experience.
so.
Yeah, especially the fact that like they said that nothing had or didn't act like anything happened or whatever. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was all in your head. Maui definitely fucking does that. I think a lot of that comes into set and setting though of like how many people take Maui and they're like at a club or a concert or whatever,
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
um, but if you take it kind of the same way, you know, like you did to just go be by yourself or whatever, like it's fucking psychedelic. It is, you know.
Yeah. Definitely I was surprised at I thought Molly was like sort of robotic. You take it, boom, happiness, sort of just a smile smeared across your face. And but that was not the case. I wasn't sure maybe if I just didn't have any dopamine in my brain to to use at the moment
Yeah.
or what. It could be anything, a combination of anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and serotonin and dopamine and like all those like levels in your brain like is something we don't take into account when we're always talking about dosage or substance, right? That like if the reason these drugs are having these effects is because they're the way they affect the release of these drugs in our brain, well then like the pre-existing amounts of those drugs in our brain is going to affect the experience too.
Yeah, of course. Every person is a little chemistry kitchen of
Yeah.
just random little bits bumping into each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
What sort of conclusions did you draw from that experience of not understanding it to trying to understand it afterwards? Like what I guess how did you come to terms with it?
Um, I don't I don't know. I think I just took it in stride. I'm just
Yeah.
like, well, that's just life is weird.
It's probably the best way to take it, right?
you know yeah, I've noticed I have this weird little philosophy. I don't know why I believe it, but whenever sort of like a weird miracle comes my way, or something I consider a miracle, like a chance, like I don't like overly bless it. I'm not overly thankful. I'm just like I just sort of like nod and go like, all right, cool, and then that's it. Like take it in stride, sort of. And I just have sort of the weird underlying belief that just doing that sort of it might just perpetuate another weird little miracle. I don't know why.
Yeah. No, I think that all is gratitude, and that's been a big thing since the start of this channel, like, and since people started uh paying attention to it, at least, that I've noticed just like gratitude for anything, no matter how big or small, and acknowledging to the universe that not only could that thing you're grateful for not have existed, but nothing could have existed. And like
Hmm.
you have to be
Yeah.
grateful for everything. You have to be grateful for the bad things that happen, that you get to learn from that and grow from that too. And it's a much better way to live, because like I've noticed there's the worst times in my life. I was also like, man, everything fucking happens to me. Everything's bad. Like it all happens to me. I'm so unlucky. And like, lo and behold, more bad shit happens to you. You know, you attract that. And so, even if it's just law of attraction or whatever, gratitude helps, bring better things into your life for sure, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, people, I think we were talking about this in the last episode, but whether you call that blessing or religion or praying or whatever, like it's all just being grateful, and like, that's never a bad thing, no matter what you want to call it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'd say psychedelics, in psychedelics, there are a lot of motifs that like sort of patterns that appear in each person's trip, and gratitude is one of the biggest ones. I'd say in almost every trip everyone ever does, they experience some form of gratitude.
Yeah. Even if it was a bad trip, when it's over, you're like, oh, thank God I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, we're at almost half an hour, so we can wrap it up unless there's anything else you want to talk about real quick. Or...
I think I'm good.
Cool. Well, yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver, for reaching out to me. And like I said, man, I mean, you emailed me like last week or whatever, and like, I mean, this is going to go up on Saturday, and like, that's just kind of how we're doing it. And people just keep reaching out, and like, we'll just get on the show, and thank you for being one of those that's like, hey, I got some cool stuff to talk about, and I think it was a good episode. So
thanks. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you having the guts to start a podcast and put all this out there in the first place.
As always, thank you for listening to the Help Find the Others podcast. Please don't forget to check out our Discord server to connect with our growing community. The link to join can be found in the description. And if you feel like donating to our channel to help us grow, a link to our Patreon can also be found in the description, as well as some cryptocurrency wallet addresses. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast or have any questions about these topics, please email helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com. If you would like to leave a voicemail or a text message question for a future episode, Stan, what's that number again?
567-233-1335.
Okay, guys, thanks again. And until next time, let's help find the others.